So we're about to start our first session.
Indeed. And, I think we're really excited for this first session. It's a great session to kick off with because it's going to be talking a lot about the Navy. And we have an absolutely amazing guest who's coming up. So we have in the house
welcoming Sukhinder Singh, owner of the Whisky Exchange and the discoverer of the last flagons that were made into Last Consignment, also known to some as the Drinks Master.
Then we also have Ollie Chilton, who is master blender and all-time good person, who is the person that put together Black Tot and is the person who is really behind a lot of our TWE and Whisky Exchange and Elixir Distillers, bottlings and everything like that. So we're super excited to have him. And of course, the Sea Daddy himself, John Hume in the house, former Royal Navy and possibly one of the funniest people I've had the pleasure of interacting with.
So welcome, let's bring them onto the stage. Let's see them up now. Welcome everyone, how are we?
Good.
Hello.
A bit more excitement would be good.
Wonderful,
Energy in the house. Sukhinder, have some more Black Tot, please. Sukhinder needs a lay back. Someone go out,
splice the main brace.
Team.
Come on, let's go. It's 10 a.m. How are we all?
Wild one last night, so I'm already knackered. Too much rum.
You had a wild one?
You had a wild one, yeah. He was on the drink. He's dangerous. 3.5-year-old drinking rum at 11 o'clock last night.
3.5-year-old drinking rum.
Absolutely.
I like it. Good. It's a good start in life. I think I took my first drink when I was about 3, and look at me now. Be that a lesson to you, Ollie.
It's called makeup.
Do you like the makeup? So Sukhinder walked in this morning. Sukhinder walked in this morning and went, "Have you got makeup on?" And then was rude about it. Because I think Sukhinder's seen me with makeup on about 4 times in my life. Thanks, Sukhinder. I love you too.
Love you.
Right.
Happy Black Tot Day, guys.
Yes.
Happy Black Tot Day.
Happy Black Tot Day. Cheers, everyone. And if you're at home watching along, cheers as well. So over the next hour and a half, we're going to look at, we're going to sort of dive into the history of Black Tot Day, of the Navy Rum Blend. We've got obviously our fantastic guests here who have brilliant perspectives. So John Hume, for those of you who don't know, you used to actually be the Jack Dusty on the ships and served the rum ration from 1961 to 1970. Is that correct, John?
It is indeed, sir. It is indeed. It's how I started at the age of 15, having to dish out gallons a day of neat rum to all those poor lads at on board ship, in the middle of the ocean. It was our only pleasure in those days.
Surely not your own.
Mail used to take a month to get there. Used to have to number your letters on the back. So when you got letters 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you didn't read 8 first because that could have been your Dear John. You know what a Dear John is?
Actually,
I've seen it.
Now very, what's the word I'm trying to look for? For something or other. I'm very good at Jack speak. I have been reading.
Well, you know what a Dear John is, don't you?
Well, it'll be the letter of...
It's a letter saying, Dear John, I'm sorry, but I'm 2 months pregnant and you've been gone 9 months.
I mean, there was a lot in this book that I can't actually talk about, John, because as you know, after our last chat, I decided to study quite hard this book of absolute...
Well, only looked at the nice comments, not the naughty ones.
I was not... Mitch would not let me say all the naughty ones, but I've managed to put a few naughty ones in throughout the 24 hours.
Yeah,
so,
I've been awake all morning thinking, how do we start this one off? And all I could think of was bollocks. That's it. It was all to do with when I joined up at Ganges, age 15 and 5 days. We had to go back to school. We had to learn naval history, English, maths, and a very weird subject called mechanics. It's not mechanics as motor mechanics. This was to do with arithmetic and when you get in a rowing boat, it's not a rowing boat. So you get your wallet and you put them in the gunnels. Now, so you know, when you row in a boat like that, the wallets, where's my camera, right? It's like a circular brass holder.
Oh, the wee thing that the oars go in.
It's into your gunnel of the ship, of the boat, and you put your oars in it.
Correct.
So you put your oars in your wallet.
Euphemism for something else, John.
Pardon?
Is that
No.
something else?
So you put your oars into your wallets, right?
I've never done that before, John. I'm not gonna lie.
And with mechanics, now when you think back to sailing ships, okay, the most common object on a sailing ship is rope. And up to the 1970s, people had been naughty and were sent to a naval prison in Portsmouth, DQ's detention quarters. Their job, not sew mailbags, but to pick tar out of the ropes. Because on sailing ships, you get all this rope, and when you use the ropes to pull on a pulley or anything else, it produces a tar in the rope which you have to pick out. Now that then transferred into putting it onto your queue. You know what your queue is? It's your pigtail, right? You've got to pick. You know, sailors had a pigtail. Sailors had a pigtail, didn't they? Yeah.
Is there a bear behind you?
Oh, we've got Yvonne.
We've got Yvonne.
Yvonne, I guess.
Right.
I guess
She's just turned up. Look, now sailors have a collar. All the navies have this collar, right? And that was to let your pigtail, sit on your collar, which is detachable, so you didn't dirty your uniform. That then became on the back of your settee called a antimacaster. Do you know what they are? You're not old enough, are you? You know, in the back of your settee at home, you have a little lace doily or something that just put on the back of the settee.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Your brill cream in the olden days, Mitch, you know, when people used to comb the hair and that.
Filthy, man.
So anyway, so it's all to do with this thing, mechanics, right? So if you, it's early in the morning, I'm not awake yet.
Need some more rum, John.
I know. So with mechanics, you've got a load, you've got an effort, and you've got the fulcrum. A wheelbarrow, as an example, you've got the load, which sits in the wheelbarrow. You've got the fulcrum, which is the wheel, and you've got the effort, which is your hands picking it up by the handles. Transfer that equation, if you like, to a rowing boat. All right. You actually pull. It's called pulling. Not pulling a bird, you're pulling a boat. So you pull on the oars in your wallet to pull the boat through the water. Right. So
And what happens if you see an Admiral Brown floating past?
a what?
Brown.
Admiral Brown floating past.
You've been reading Jack speak, haven't you? Hey, I can't find
Yes, we
mine.
have, John.
I can't find mine.
I'll let you into what that is a bit later, John.
Yeah. Anyway, so the fulcrum of the oar is in the water. That, believe it or not, actually stays still when you're pulling. The blade in the water does not move. You put all your effort onto the oars and you pull it, and you're pulling the boat through the water. The oar sits still in the water. All right. So that is where a lot of naval language comes from, or a lot of English language comes from the Navy. All right. And if you're reading Jack speak, there'll be a lot of words there that you didn't realise all meant something in the Navy, but not on Civil Street. So that's all I'm
It's
saying.
really funny you say that. No, it's really funny you say that, John, because actually, when we were going through, we did find that, and there was a lot of things that we didn't know that
Yeah.
So it was super interesting to read. So, talking of the Navy, Mitch.
Yeah, let's get on some more rum, and I'd like to introduce Ollie Chilton at this point. So, our head blender from Elixir Distillers, who created Black Tot Finest Caribbean, and has also created our Black Tot 50th anniversary blend. So, Ollie, let's look at a little bit about the history of the Navy rum blend. Can you tell us a bit about its origins and how it was originally put together?
So, I mean, Mitch, you've been doing a lot of this research with us, and I'm sure that you've got speakers like Matt Peter coming in later who will debunk anything we say with their vast amount of knowledge and research. The bit I found particularly interesting was, one, the idea of recipe. There seems to be a lot of reference to recipe, but what we can work out is there's not a consistent recipe. There seems to be a lot of references to using like Guyana, 60% Guyana, and up 60% more in most recipes. But in terms of specific marks, there's very little reference. And I imagine that's because, and John, you probably know more about this than I do. And I imagine it's because it's much like blending today. You're essentially buying the spirits that are available. You're buying from any given year. If the distillery's closed, you can't buy their mate. If you're suddenly something's not available, you have to adjust and change. But what makes the Navy blend and the rum and last consignment for me so fascinating is the way in which it was put together. So our understanding is it's put together in big wooden vats, and there seems to be a little bit of questions whether they were open top or closed. And John, I believe you saw them, so you can tell us. It would make a massive difference to how it would taste. But essentially, massive vats had a pipe about a third of the way up, and you would take the rum from the pipe, and then basically that would leave a third of the rum in the tank, which essentially is like having a Solera system. So you've always got some of the old rum you put in, and what that means is it's continually aging, continually developing, and you're going to end up with a rum that consists of some rums that are going back 20, 30, 40 years, and some rums that are brand new. This is a technique that we talk about a lot now in whiskey. They talk about in terms of cognac and using old spirits. It's kind of this hallowed technique. They talk about in sherry for making a great consistent product. And it turns out the Royal Navy were doing it for decades before anyone talked about it in marketing or explained it. I think it's fantastic. It just means
that's just marketing.
It seems like that's just marketing. But the Royal Navy were going around going, we're doing this for marketing reasons. I think what's amazing, they're doing it for flavour, and it shows that it works. And when you try Last Consignment, you try that old Navy rum, you can see those layers of development. I think also you can taste the fact that it's got everything in it. So one of the records I saw recently said that they were clearly using Guyana and they were using Trinidad, but they were also using rums from Australia and all around the world. And I believe, Mitch, you found some interesting records about them buying from places other than ex-British colonies, so buying from Colombia, all over the world, wherever rum was available. So it means it's a truly global blend, and you've got all of these different styles and flavours coming together and then married over essentially a relatively long time for making what, in the end, is probably one of the most complex drinks you'll ever get to try.
And actually, that's a really good question, Ollie. Actually, if I can throw this to Sukhinder, we looked at a lot of the different islands that come in, and what do you think each island contributed to the blend? If we look at kind of Black Tot, what do you think the characters each gave to the rum as a whole?
I think the interesting part is, so I'm jumping a little bit to the next question, which was, when I discovered the flagons, and once I amassed a sensible amount of quantity, it was like, I need to try these. So I opened 2 flagons at different times because they had different markings. And what I discovered was that the style of the rum was quite different similar but different. One was a lot heavier and richer, whereas the other one was still dark, had the nuances, but had this elegance and was probably a little thinner. So I think through the research, what we discovered is, going back, I initially first thought that the reason that the two flagons were different was possibly because of the two different Solera systems which were in operation. So one, London, and one down in Portsmouth. So I presume they had come from different victualers' yards. But over time, what we've discovered is that actually the British Navy rum formula constantly changed and evolved. As Ollie said, they were buying from different islands, and it changed. At one point, Jamaica, I believe, was taken completely out. But what we do know is the predominant rum in the naval blend was Guyana. So, each country has its own unique characteristic. I mean, if you look at the rums on an individual basis today, let's look at Bajan. Bajan is lovely, it's elegant, it's floral, it's classy. If you look at Trinidad is a bit lighter, a little thinner. For me, it doesn't really add much, but of course, in the old days, you had things like Coroni, which were quite robust and big, a bit like, maybe a bit like the Jamaicans, which are pungent, estery. And then you've got Guyana, which, as we know, is the heart of the blend. You've got those, it's really dark. You've got the tobacco, you've got the coffee, you've got the licorice. So all those nuances which we classify or we like about Navy blend, I would say those predominant flavors come from Guyana.
Brilliant. And I mean, the rum and Navy, how did rum affect the morale in the Navy, John?
It was very interesting listening to Sukhinder about differences in the tot. We never noticed it, simply because when you add water to it, it gets rid of all those nuances that he was talking about. I mean, we didn't know what the word nuances meant in those days. Of course, the other thing was that we carried rum on board ships to last for the whole commission, say 2.5 years. So we got the whole batch, if you like, at that time, presumably from Clarence or William Yard in Pompey or Guz, and we kept it. On the shore basis, they would be topping it up all the time. And as I said before, on the shore basis, they have a single tot, neat, and then they put the water in it themselves. On board ship, it's mixed there and then. You don't give Jolly Jack a neat tot, only the chuffs and puffs, as I said before. So the differences in taste was never noticed, and even today, I did buy some of your little miniatures, which are absolutely brilliant, and I've tried tasting the different ones. I mean, before, I've only heard of 3 rums: Lemon Heart, Pussers, and Black Tot, and Lambs, Navy rum, ditto Navy rum. I drink it. I don't break it down into these nuances. It's like wine. I drink it. I don't care if it's got strawberry or cherry aftertones and length on it. I just drink it, and that's what sailors do. All they do is drink it. They don't dissect it to find out what it's like. As for the morale, that was very important because it was at dinner time. You've been awake since 7:30, so you've been awake 5 hours. You want some food, and you have your tot. You sit down around the mess deck, and life is good. You pass your tot around. You drink as much as you can, and then you sleep it off before you go back to work. So, for morale-wise, it was very good. When they stopped it, I don't know. I can't remember whether I didn't drink. As I said before, as I said before, when I was on my last ship, HMS Hecate, I went temperance to get my Threepence a day top, and because I issued the top, I could divulge. And I've just been looking at what? I've just been looking at my
your Jack speak. Oh, your service.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And on the 30th of on the 11th of May, on the 31st January 1970. So we're talking of, that's 50 years ago, isn't it? 1970.
Don't ask me, I can't do maths.
Yeah, I was at HMS Mercury, and I can't remember the top because I think I carried on having the Threepence. Because Threepence was a lot of money in them days. You could get a threepenny lucky bag. You don't know what those are either. Full of little sweeties. So I can't remember the top being stopped. I remember the aggravation and the anger that we all felt, and there were mass demonstrations up and down the world, if you like, on board ship, and everybody was walking with a black armband on, hence the reason that you got Black Tot Day.
Yes,
and we're wearing our black armbands, John.
Pardon?
We're wearing our black armbands.
Yes, I know, I've noticed. I've got mine on somewhere.
Yay!
The black diary, I'm doing two in one. That's the grog, 2 in 1.
So John, that's a good question. John, as well, I'm just going to ask you, can you turn down your speakers just slightly? We've got a slight bit of feedback coming through there. But again, John, why did Black Tot Day happen? Why did this all come about? You know, because this was a tradition that began officially in 1731. For 239 years, this tradition carried on with the tot. So why was it finally in 1970 that they decided to kill off the tot?
Is that for me?
Yes, go on, John.
Sorry. Sound. They say that, the real reason, they say, is that the breathalyzer had just come out. And if you had a tot of rum, either the neat tot or even the 2 in 1, the grog, you would not pass a breathalyzer test as it was in those days. And because if you're on a shore base, a lot of people used to go home for dinner, and the chuffs and puffs would probably have a tot when they finished work and then go home. And of course, if they got caught, they're in trouble because you get taken to court, and then the Navy punishes you as well. All right, if you're a naughty boy ashore and you get fined or something, you brought the Navy into dispute, and then you have to go and see the captain, and you're in trouble again, and you get another punishment. So if you're having your tots, I think it was the breathalyzer. But the Navy was saying that with all the technical equipment, don't forget, in 1970 there was no such. There were, but very expensive calculators, as an example. They hadn't come out in 1960, 65, didn't use those. And that to us today is quite a simple device, a calculator, but they weren't about. So everything coming into it was all these sonars and knobs and tweaks and things like that. And they were saying that it's getting far too technical, so you can't have your. Imagine being on a nuclear-powered submarine after top time. You can't imagine.
Isn't that Donald Trump leading the USA at the moment? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say political things like that.
What, Trumping? That's called coughing in your handbag. Quick, get the book out.
I'm on it.
Coughing in your handbag.
Puffing or coughing?
Coughing, not coughing.
So
that's called coronavirus.
Coughing in your handbag.
I'm looking, John. I'm looking.
So for anyone who's tuned in with us whilst Dawn looks that up, so at 11 a.m, make sure you're here because John is going to do an official bosun's call. We're going to have tots together. And I understand you've been practicing, John. Getting ready.
This is
John, it's not in here. I've got cough to coffin, and I've got coffin in your rompers, which I'll let everyone.
coffee in the rompers. That's fine.
Is that the same?
That's the same. Coffee in your rompers, yeah.
Coffee in your room.
That's not a fart.
Yeah.
That's it? Coffin in my handbag? Is me having a
Yeah.
That was my saying.
Wow.
Oliver said that she's invented that one. I mean, I go one step further. You know, I've had bowel cancer, and I have a bag on. So I don't pass wind anymore. I just cough in my handbag, which is my bag for life.
Bag for life. Oh my God. John, I love you so much.
But, the young man there misnamed this as a whistle. Where are you? This.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry.
I got very told off.
We heard that you told them off.
It's very strange because it's called a bosun's call. It belongs to the bosun, all right, and it's called a call, not a pipe. But the call that you make when you use it, that is the pipe. So when you pipe the side, you get your call out and you blow it, and the sound that comes out is the pipe. But you're using a call. You would think it was a pipe making the call, wouldn't you? But it's the other way around. It's bosun's call making the pipe. So.
Okay, I think I got that.
I keep practicing. What banished me to the toilet.
Well, we're looking forward to that. So if you're watching along, again, at 11 a.m, we'll be doing a tot all together with everyone around the world. And yes, make sure you've got your rum ready to mark the exact moment 50 years on.
So should we find out how Sukhinder found the flagons?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. How did you find them?
Story.
How did I find them? They actually found me. So I got a call. This is probably around 12 or 13 years ago. I got a call. I mean, I've traditionally always bought old and rare whiskey, spirits. And I got a call from an ex-naval chap saying, used to be in the Navy, and have you heard of the rum ration? I've got two of the original flagons. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. So I agreed to buy them, bought them, forgot about them, didn't think anything of them at the time, very pleased on my acquisition. And then he passed a friend on to me who called me saying, I've got 2 or 3 of these flagons. So I bought those as well. And a number of months later, it just escalated from there, the friend of a friend of a friend. And it just happened. Then suddenly I was inundated with 10 or 20 flagons. And it was like, okay, if I want to buy more, I really want to know what this stuff tastes like. Is it any good? I didn't expect much, I'll be honest with you, because remember, this was supposed to be average cheap rum served on a mass scale. So I opened it, and to my amazement, it was fantastic. I didn't expect that at all. It was so amazing that I had to sort of basically keep the flagon on my desk for a week to retry it every day just to make sure it was as good as I thought it was, because I thought it just didn't seem possible how amazing it was. And it was probably the first rum I had tried, which was, for me, up there with whiskey, really complex, layers and layers and layers of flavor. So that got me excited. So I bought those 10, 20 flagons. And then, again, a number of months later, I came across a parcel of 20, 30 flagons, which, again, I bought. And then more appeared. So for me, I wanted to get to the bottom of where they were coming from. And what I found out was that I think about several years earlier, the Royal Navy, who had been storing these flagons since 1970, wanted to redevelop one of their warehouses. And this warehouse was was just full of pallets of these flagons. So they eventually ended up selling them to a chap called Ken Copleston. I didn't know this at the time, but it so happened that Ken Copleston was a friend of mine, but I never knew he had bought these flagons. He in turn had sold them on a number of years later to two different parties, a company in America and to a wine investment fund. Altogether, there was probably around 3,000 odd flagons. And it was like, this is crazy. How can there be so much? You know, so I was a bit reserved. Do I buy 3,000 flagons? So going back to the flagon,
Sukhinder,
trying it
you've never
again.
been reserved in your life. What's stopped you now? You've never been reserved in your life.
That's why I bought them. So
You're going to say that's why you hired me.
another story, guys. So I tracked them down. I phoned up the Royal Navy. I got through to the person who basically was in charge of the disposal. So he told me that basically these have ended up in the hands of the liquidators, because the wine company that ended up buying them basically were up to mischief and were done for fraud. So long story short, I tracked down the receivers and found out that basically they had just sold the flagons. And I was like, oh my God, when did you sell them? They go, yesterday. And I go, is there any chance of bidding? He goes, no, I'm sorry, we've sold them. But he goes, out of interest, what would you offer? I go, all right, give me 10 minutes, I'll phone you back. So I worked out, he sent me the list, I worked out a price, I made him an offer, and he goes, actually, it's considerably more than we've been offered, so we're going to accept your offer. So I ended up with 3,000 of these lovely, lovely, amazing rum flagons. And that's really how it happened. So, of course, the next question was, what do I do? You know, do I sell them flagon at a time? Some of the bars I spoke to who absolutely love the liquid just said, you know, this is really difficult to serve from a 4.5 litre demijohn. And it's very expensive. So I came up with the idea to basically create a brand and actually put them into, 70 cl bottles. Of course, the next was a name. I checked to see if Black Tot was trademarked. Fortunately, it wasn't. And the rest is history.
So, I mean, actually, just a point on that flagon, for those of you joining us a little bit later, the amazing Craig Harper and Tristan Stevenson are actually going to make a daiquiri from one of the original flagons. So it should be super awesome. But, Mitch.
And for anyone who hasn't seen one of the flagons before, this is what they look like. So these are actually stone jars covered in wicker. They're just over 4.5 litres in size, so 1 imperial gallon. And yeah, they made for very easy transport. So whereas on bigger ships, taking casks on board obviously made a lot of sense. For smaller ships or submarines, flagons were a much easier way of transporting your rum. And these would come in boxes of 2. Just very, very easy to take onto bases, move around, and you'd carry, good 4.5 litres of rum to keep you going. So,
and actually, maybe Ollie, you could answer this. I'm quite interested to know when Sukhinder came to you with all these flagons and in Sukhinder style went, just do something, Ollie. what went through your head there?
It was before Ollie's time.
That was before my time. Although we actually have, we're still some flagons. Which we went up to look at them in Bond at the start of the year, and we found that we don't just have 2 different styles of flagons up there now. There are different vintages, there are different stories, and I think Mitch contacted John. One of the things that came out of this is we found some flagons all came back into the UK at one time for one particular event. So for us now, it's about going through them, understanding the liquid, and then understanding the history, and then trying to put them in a bottle and explain that history. So I think it's probably some fantastic stories that we can share with that liquid.
I saw the question just now, guys. How much can a rum flagon hold? It's an imperial gallon, so 4.5 litres.
And I think, what's so nice about this whole story, and, I actually remember, I wasn't working for Specialty at the time either. And Sukhinder, I was at Selfridges, and Sukhinder, I remember, emailed me and said, I'd like you to come to this Black Tot Day. And it was on the HMS Belfast, wasn't it? And it was, I walked on this ship and I was like, oh my goodness. I have to say, if anyone can take the chance to go and visit the HMS Belfast, it's really, really fascinating, really interesting. And the guys we were talking to on board were just amazing. And it was an amazing day. We just had this, and I remember I still have my bottle from that day, the original Black Tot bottle. I haven't opened it because I was waiting for a special occasion. Maybe it's now. Oh, we have some here.
Just to remind you, today's actually the 10th anniversary of Black Tot Last Consignment, because we launched it exactly 10 years ago on the 40th anniversary, as Dawn says, on the HMS Belfast. I think, for us, it was
very old. Thank you for making me feel very old. I thought it was like 5 years ago.
10th anniversary. And it was perfect because, I remember when it was Dave who helped us host it. And Dave wrote the book for the Last Consignment. And in his research, which we didn't realize at the time, was that where the HMS Belfast is positioned, literally opposite used to be the headquarters of EDF Man, which were the owners of the rum. So, it was just perfect. It was iconic. It was just, absolutely perfect in every way to do it where we did it. And we had, as you remember, we had 3 old sailors perform the ceremony, and it was just lovely, lovely guys. It was such a lovely day, such a lovely day.
They didn't do much Jack speak, though, John. Really, we were... Oh, John wants to speak.
Sorry. Interesting question, Sukhinder. You bought all the flagons, gallons. As I said previously, the cost of those was 7 6 a gallon, which is, 32 pence a gallon. That was the value back in 1965. So when the tot had finished, all the ships around the world and in all the shore bases that we had, there would have been barrels of rum left. Well, even the empty ones as well. They must have all gone back to the victualling yards, and there must have been rum left in those barrels. There must have been full barrels of rum in the victualling yards. What happened to those?
No idea. My gut feeling is they must have been sold on to some sort of a rum broker or a rum brand. Because if I'm not wrong, Pussers came around later. So it wasn't that, they sold the recipe to Pussers and then Pussers bought the stock. I think that happened many years later. But my gut feeling says, John, is they would have stopped all shipments from their producers, and anything which was en route or anything which was coming would have just been sold to someone, to another rum brand of some sort. It could have been sold. Logically, you would say either Lemon Hard or Captain Morgan or somebody along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, the empty barrels, they were still valuable, weren't they? Did there not people use like brandy casks? Did they not use them to make wine or something like that?
No, not rum casks. No, John.
No.
No.
Too strong a flavour.
It would be illegal to use any other cask besides a fresh wine cask or a cask that use wine in production. You're not allowed to use anything else.
Yeah. I think in the old days, John, the whiskey industry used a variety of casks. They used wine casks, they used rum casks, they used Calvados casks. So you never know; it could have ended up into the whiskey industry.
Okay, that's what I meant. Somebody used them.
Yeah, absolutely possible.
Yeah, because there must have been thousands of barrels knocking about in 1970.
Tens of thousands, absolutely.
Yeah. But as I say, 7 6 a gallon. Did you paid a little bit more than that?
Yeah, I paid 50p.
Happy
Now that
days.
I don't believe.
Thank you.
So, for anyone, we first were introduced to John after you emailed a bottle store. Was it Nauticalia last year? John, and you were emailing them, asking them for a bottle of Navy rum after the barbaric act from the government.
Yeah.
50 years ago. And I remember reading your email thinking, I must meet this man. We must see what he's all about. So I'm very glad we got in touch with you. And
I'm glad you got in touch with me, mate. I can tell you that. Because I'd never heard of Black Tot rum.
The story of like how you and John had to have about 5 phone calls to.
Yeah, we've had a lot of back and forths, and I realized immediately at the start that I was going to have to. You're the only person I've ever had to read 2 different books, Jack Speak and Nelson's Blood, in order just to understand what you were talking about most of the time, John. And deciphering all your emails doesn't work on Google Translate.
Well, I think the real blame lies with my daughters. They keep these babies. As women do, and
Oh my God, John!
well, I'm being sexy. So the competition. I won't say who it was. I've produced these flagons or commemorative casks of their particular rum, and I've collected them for my funeral. So each grandchild has got their own special. Pass me one down, Yvonne. Stoneware thing. So we had 4 grandchildren, and I managed to get. I like the name Pushers Up. So, well, this is Nelson's Blood. So, where are you? There. Sorry, Navy one. That's it. Nelson's Blood. Right. So. My 3 grandsons have all got a bottle, all different, and they've got the names on. This one is Oliver's.
Oh.
So last year I wrote off to Pusset at the other competition.
It's okay, you can say their name.
Well, I'd say it. Another commemorative flask because. We've now got 2 more grandchildren, a granddaughter and another grandson. And I wanted to get them a separate flagon each so they can have one. And they said, no, we're not going to do anything special for the 50th anniversary, which I thought was a bit mean. But they kept it on file for some unknown reason. And then... about 6 months ago, I had this email from some lad named Mitch. I don't bloody. And it was this young man here, and that's history. But it was all to do with my daughters. I wanted more special ones. It's still full of rum. I'm not allowed to drink it. That's for my funeral. I'm going to have it on my coffin. Each bottle on top of my coffin when we go into the church. And so I'm still waiting for 2 extra. Special, although I've got a Black Tot one now. Which
we can get you 2 special ones.
It would have been
John,
nice
for you. John will make them for you. Don't worry.
Oh,
We've
you
got
are.
a guy who does.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ollie's on it. He's coming into the office today. He's going to start blending. He's like, I'm making John a rum.
Oliver. Now, did you watch the other program with me in? Did you?
I did.
You did? Did you watch it?
I did.
Did you? Can you remember what that meant? Remember what that meant? If you do a special one, already Stobart's just gone up. If you do a special one for me, you can come round for a talk.
We're all when coronavirus is hopefully driving up to have a pint.
We've got a Corona Road up here, and they keep selling Corona in the bottles, so we don't know where the virus has come from.
Now, John, I'm going to jump in here because we're only about 3-4 minutes away from 11 a.m. when we're going to do our tot together. And I'd like to introduce, we've got another special guest, a surprise little guest coming in from the Chatham Historic Dockyard. We should have John Bryce backstage if we're able to bring him onto the stream as well. John, are you there? We'll see if this... It's always tricky working with outdoors. No, we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll see if we can get John in for the tot. But John, so talk us through the boatswain's call. How does this procedure work? How do we get everyone together for their daily rum ration?
Throughout the day, there are various pipes made. Whether you're fueling the ship with gasoline, the pipe would come on, no smoking, things like that, or the captain wants to talk to you, anything like that. Does that go through? Now, it's 59 years since I've used this, and I wasn't very good then.
I want my earplugs.
Shut up.
Yvonne's got her earplugs, everyone.
She's been up north, up to Iceland. So it's 59 years since I've used one of these, so I'm not very good at it. But whenever there was an announcement to make, it would come off the bridge, and the guy on the bridge, the duty boatswain or whatever, would blow his pipe. It's called. That would tell everybody there was an important message coming on, and you just listen to it because that noise is very shriek, is it? Very loud, and you can hear it. So people listen out. What's it for? So that's all it was. And of course, in bad weather in the olden days, you know, sailing ships and things like that, you couldn't hear people talk. So you'd hear that. So that's, I mean, I can only do the one note, but there's lots of different combinations of notes defining certain things to do. Climb up the rigging or man overboard or things like that. And you knew these just by the sound of it, and you had to learn all the, it's like Morse code, but with a pipe.
Yes. Wonderful.
So
Well,
that was the reason.
well, I think we are. Is it
At
11
11
o'clock?
o'clock.
11 o'clock exactly. John, are you calling time here?
Do you hear there? Do you hear there? Hands of messers, grab your fannies, muster in the dining hall for the last tot of 250 years. Carry on.
Cheers.
Up
Cheers, John.
spirits.
Up spirits.
To everyone. Up spirits. Cheers.
Here's to 24 hours. 23.
That was wonderful, John.
You know, you can tell the connoisseurs like Oliver. Sorry, Oliver. Jolly Jack.
Yes. That's right. We're meant to down this, so.
Frozen.
I must admit, it does taste nicer
First in the morning.
when you drink it like that. Or is that picture frozen on Oliver?
I think all these
Frozen,
pictures.
look.
Perfect. That's how we think of it anyway. So all right. Well, thank you, and happy Black Tot Day to everyone around the world. We know it's technically it's a day of mourning and a day of loss, but we think we need to change it from now on to be a day of celebration.
And we will next year do 48 hours of Black Tot. You heard it here first.
What are you doing?
I'm going rogue.
Did you sound more American as the day goes on?
Yeah, probably.
You whiz, have a nice day now.
Y'all have a good day.
Listen, you already, honey.
I'm loving you, John.
Wife back.
So, Sukhinder, one of the things I'm interested to know about, I know last time we spoke, you pulled out amazing amass of different rum bottles and different Navy rum bottlings over the years. So, and I'm fascinated, you know, other than the flagons that we found for Last Consignment as well. Can you tell me a bit more about some of the really special rum bottles you found over the years?
Well, some of them are behind me, if you can just see.
Are you bringing down them for us afterwards so we can have a little talk?
This is at the after party at Trailer, yeah?
Why not? I think some of the nicest bottles I've found are merchant bottlings from the UK. I think what it shows you is that there were hardly any rum brands if you go back in time until, you could say, in the last 15 to 20 years. So in the old days, you know, flagons of rum used to come in, used to be sold to merchants, wine shops, spirit shops, whiskey shops, and they used to bottle them with their own name. So I have, for example, some rum bottles bottled by, for example, William Grant and Sons. I've got a rum which is bottled by, I think, Shivers Brothers. So I think that fascinates me quite a lot. But also, I've got, if you can just about see, I'll try and push it here. Oops, no, we're not going to be able to do this. This one here, it's a beautiful lemon heart Royal Navy Demerara rum. So, you know, bottles like that, it's 151 proof. I've got a beautiful lemon heart here, 30 years old, in a beautiful triangle-shaped bottle. So things like that. I like historic brands, you know, old Bacardis, old Havana Clubs, old Lemon Heart. I think because, you know, the history is there. To see the evolution of how these brands developed from as far back as you can go, I find absolutely beautiful. Occasionally, you know, you find 2 or 3 bottles, you find bottles which are leaking, which gives you an excuse to open them. And I would say probably for me, my favorite rum of all time, which I was fortunate to have found 6 bottles of, 2 of which had no labels. So for me, it was perfect. So I opened one of them. Sorry, I haven't told you what. Is an old Barben Court 8-star, 5-star, 8-year-old. And this was probably from the 1940s, originated from the USA. And honestly, for me, it is to die for. It is just, it's very soft, but it has this lovely depth and richness and velvetiness and silkiness, but just lots and layers of delicate fruit flavors, and absolutely to die for. So
it was interesting. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just, so we were tasting an old Coroni last night. And when I was tasting with Sukhinder, and I think for me it's something in old bottles, it's that grapefruit. It's that really beautiful tropical fruit. I mean, Sukhinder taught me Longmorn always has that grapefruit character. And is it to do with the distillation techniques, that they were using more natural fermentation? Where were they getting all this amazing fruit that is potentially not there today?
I personally feel you're absolutely right. It's the fermentation element. I think, it's the raw ingredients. I feel the raw ingredients, you know, they were what we call today as organic. You know, they were pure. There was no chemicals in the sugarcane, and the fermentation in a lot of these warm tropical countries, Caribbean countries, fermentation is wild. You know, you don't even have to do anything to activate it. In my trip last year, I think that's the part which blew me away the most, I think. You know, you go to Scotland, you see the distilleries, they have to activate the fermentation with yeast. Whereas in the Caribbean, they literally put the sugarcane juice or the molasses, with water into the fermentation tank, and literally within 20 minutes or half an hour, it's just going without even having to do anything. And I think the fermentations are very long. You know, there's no rush. It's like the old days. In every industry, there was no rush. Things took time. People
There
close
was
to
no marketing.
absolutely, there was no marketing. So I think it makes a big difference. I think it makes a huge difference. Yeah, I think the other thing is as well, I think you got to look at the raw ingredient a little bit. I think so, if you look at sugarcane, of course, then that transpires into molasses, it's naturally sweet. It has those lovely, juicy, tropical notes. And I think they're just, we're
Enhanced.
enhanced exactly through fermentation. They're enhanced and released. And I think that comes across beautifully.
Wonderful. And I think we've got Ollie back in the room now.
During the First World War, when the troops were sent over the soldiers were given a tot of Navy rum to give him the get up and go over the trenches. Was that rum any different? Was it proper Navy rum, or was it something that somebody had invented? Or because when you consider how many men were fighting, and there must have been a lot of rum going out to the trenches. Have you managed to discover what kind of rum that was?
I think our research, I'm going to start this, but I think Ollie and Mitch may be able to answer this a little better. From our understanding, there was no army rum. Yeah. Army rum was actually Navy rum supplied to the armed forces.
Yeah.
Is that right, Ollie?
Well, I think what we've learned so far is that there was army rum in the war, or there was rum sent to the army in the war, certainly in the First World War, but there wasn't the same purchasing for regular installments as there was in the Navy. So it's not like there was an army rum specifically put together for up until 1970. So that's only what we've seemed to have found so far. In terms of what the army were drinking, difficult to say. I'd imagine it was probably taken from the same places the Navy were purchasing their rums. You'd imagine it'd be quite Demerara heavy because they were the biggest producer. I don't think, because you don't have the same blending tradition you've got in the Navy, it's probably not going to taste the same. It'll probably be quite rough and ready.
Right.
This is one of the interesting things we find as well. Like the best historical documents we have are normally when things are bought or sold or provisioned off in certain ways. So where we have records of things being transferred, that gives us clues as to what was happening. Whereas, we don't have this same, I guess, mindset that we'd have in the rum world today, where we'd have people writing about it and what's this person doing with the blend and how are they portioning it off. It's a very, it was a provision. It was something that had to be issued. It had to be got out to people. So where we have those records, it gives us a much better tracking. But yeah, it does seem that the army got it as an occasional one-off at the Great War, for World War II as well. But it wasn't a mainstay. It wasn't something that was always there.
As a question, would the army more likely have been drinking brandy and fortified wines because they were more on mainland Europe? So that's what they would have drunk? Because if you think about it, the Navy was going to all these places and bringing it back, and the army wasn't. So were they actually more likely to be drinking probably brandy or gin? Jennifer?
Well, as far as I'm aware, is that when they went over, if they're in the trenches, they drink whatever they could get hold of. But when they went over the top to face the enemy, they get a tot of rum. That is all I know.
Okay.
I don't think, John, you might have friends who come to that same way. We haven't found any particular records that say the army had the same tradition of like drinking wasn't regulated. Does that make sense? So it doesn't seem to have been. There's not many records saying that drinking was regulated, although there was a lot of drinking in the army. It's not like it was in the Navy where this is what you're getting every day, and it goes back 200 years. At the start, you're obviously getting a lot more. But I imagine they're probably, exactly as John said, drinking whatever was to hand. So Dawn, you're probably right in terms of wherever you are, that's what you drink.
I mean, that's another one.
Okay, yeah.
That's another reason.
So that would make sense.
Another reason why they stopped the top I mean, you can imagine you got a rifle with a bayonet on and you've had a tot of rum. You know, you're not going to hang about. You want to get stuck in. Can't do that.
I mean, the origins of Dutch courage was the Genever that the Dutch were drinking before they went into battle. So, you know, it absolutely makes sense.
That would be gin, though, Dutch. Be gin? Dutch.
I mean,
it would have been gin.
They would have been gin, but I mean, gin, Genever was what the Dutch were drinking. I always need a top before I go in and have a meeting with Sukhinder, so I know exactly what they were doing.
I have to have a bottle.
Well, we're meeting with yourself? I understand.
Have a meeting with Dawn.
One of an Indian. Are you an Indian, Sukhinder, or are you English?
I am. Oh, a bit of both.
Yeah. Well, in the Navy, when we used to go around the world, we used to have what you call grippos. Look it up in the book. Grippos. That's where
I think I remember this one.
The expatriates live around the world, and if a warship comes in, they invite Jolly Jack to their houses to look after them. Back in 1964, we went to a place called Madras, which is now called Chennai.
Yeah.
And we had a grippo to a shipping owner's house. He'd come from Yorkshire, and we went for dinner, which consisted of tomato soup, roast beef. Oh no, steak and kidney pudding, i.e., baby's head.
No, what is steak and baby's head?
Baby's heads. Yeah, you're getting good.
My cheesy eggy hammy this morning.
Did you have cheesy ham, Eggy?
No, I didn't. I just wanted to get it in there.
We got invited to Grippo to this lad house, and he allowed us to go around Madras in his chauffeur-driven Mercedes, and we went round to the local market where these guys were flogging pythons and one thing and another. And towards the end of the night, we wanted to have a drink, and we said to the chauffeur, name of George, that the owners had gone. They'd gone back on the ship, because if you invite Jolly Jack to a knees up, then the captain would invite you to the knees up on the ship. That's how it worked. And so the owners went on board the ship, left us with George. First thing we said, George, get some wine, get some beer out. But we only had the one. And I said, can you take us somewhere where you can get a drink? Well, drinking in India is not very common. But in Madras, there was an Indian naval base there. And we went there, and we had a tot of rum.
I was frightened.
But this tot of rum we spat it out, and somebody put a match to it, and it went boom like that. So we methylated spirits with a little bit of not even rum flavouring, possibly methylated spirits and coke. I don't know, but it went up in flame. Oh, it was disgusting. So, did the Indian Navy have the tot, like the English?
I don't think so. I think they had alcohol rations, which was a mixture of whiskey, which was a mixture of rum, and I think they could buy whatever they wanted, or they were given whatever they needed. I think officially nothing like that, no. But you're absolutely right in terms of quality. Even today, John, basically the cheap liquor for the masses is actually just distilled neutral spirit with flavoring. So it's not very good. Even what they term as whiskey, cheap whiskey, it's neutral spirit. It's generally molasses-based spirit with flavor. So it's not of very good quality.
Hence the flames.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're a trailer, John.
Exactly.
So we're still going to have our night there together.
So John, is Sukhinder a brilliant grippo? I've read it.
Well, no, I've never had a grippo with him. But I'd enjoy it. I mean,
you're having a grippo with him now.
No, that's talking, that's short chattering. But if that's his house, grippo.
I've got an acquaintance made at a party or on a free treat, run ashore, who then becomes the subject of further social transaction. Interesting enough, for once in the Navy, there is no differentiation between a male or a female grippo, because there's usually a lot of differentiation otherwise. In the simplest context, a baron who has been well strangled could also be described as a splendid or brilliant grippo.
Right, very good.
End of bedtime story.
As we say up here, we're learning you. No, if that's your house, I'd love to have a look at that. I tell you.
Anytime, John. It's the office.
Yep, that's even better. Blimey.
You can organise with Mitch to come around anytime.
Yeah. You can imagine what's his name, Davies, what his name is, in the office with a backdrop of all that rum. This is the office. Like I said, we only drink it. We don't analyse it. We just drink it.
Talking of analysing.
So, Ollie, we want to. We're going to have a session with you dedicated to this, to anyone who's getting up at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, I believe, or something like that. We're going to talk about some rum then. But just for everyone watching now, we'd like to get a little taster. So we talked about how the Navy blended their rum in their open batch. How different is that to the world of blending today?
I think if you went to most companies now and said, you know what we're going to do, we're going to blend in a big open vat. Well, the accountants would all have heart attacks as they could see the vapors rising, or the rum disappearing. I don't know of anyone who's blending in quite the same fashion. There are companies who've got Solera systems, and obviously in Jerez they have a similar system in terms of the way in which they move sherry from cask to cask, so that you've always got a blend of ingredients. But in terms of having these massive open top vats and filling them continuously with rum, I honestly don't know of anyone doing exactly that. What we're doing nowadays is probably in some ways more concise, because you're blending to a specific flavour. You're trying to produce a similar flavour. The thing I'm always keen on is it's not consistent. You might have a consistent style, but you've always got changes. So the job you have today is tweaking the ingredients you've got to try and make something that is consistent enough that people enjoy it regularly. As John says, at the end of the day, it's a drink, yeah. So it's for drinking, and most people aren't going to sit around and say, "Well, this bottle tastes marginally different to the last bottle." Even if I'm going to do that, but I'm, to be fair, I'm paid to do that. When I'm drinking, I don't do it. That's for damn sure. So today, what we're doing is we're taking pretty specified ingredients. In terms of Finest Caribbean, we're taking 4 different styles of rum from 3 different places, and these are actually pre-made blends. So to gain consistency, we're buying. It's like buying paint, right? So as opposed to making your own paint, your own colour, you're buying a specific style of paint, and you put those together to create a picture.
Are you saying Black Tot tastes like paint, Ollie?
Actually, you know what? Some rum does to me. I don't know about you, but it's kind of fusel oil things. I remember speaking to Dave Broom about Corona, and he's like,
Oliver.
Sorry,
Oliver.
Yeah.
Talk about mixing. I used to work for the co-op, and we used to do factory visits, and one of them was to the co-op tea factory up in Manchester. What are you laughing for? And we saw they actually making up a co-op 99 tea, and basically, so the question is going to be, do you do this for the rum? So when you're making the tea, you have 20, 30 little cups with different tea leaves in, just dry. The water is specially pumped in from a certain place, so it's always the same water. It's boiled, left to rest, then a guy comes along and he pours water into each cup, and he goes along, and after 5 minutes, it's all timed, and he sips it, spits it out, and it goes through 20, 30 teacups. And then at the end of the day, you'll say 4 of them, 3 of them, 2 of them, 1 of them, to get to Co-op 99 tea. So the taste is always the same. So when you're making a particular rum, you were saying you have the different mixtures. Do you do the same sort of thing? You have a glass of different rums, and do you then go along, smell them, taste them, and say 6 of them, 4 of them, 2 of them?
We did exactly that, John. Yeah. In fact, in where Mitch and Dawn are sitting, when Sukhinder and I first did Finest Caribbean, we literally went along those shelves, got out every single rum, and wrote down what we liked about them. And then we wrote down what we thought would work together. And then we got samples of rums we could buy in bulk, and we started putting those together. And it took it took us a lot longer than your tea guy, who seems to be able to do it very quickly. It took us about 2 years. A lot of procrastinating, though. Probably a lot more
2 years,
drinking.
was it 2 years? I thought it was more. It felt like longer.
It was only 2 years, Dawn, this time. There are projects going a lot longer. But I think in the end, I mean, we reckon we had 26 recipes, but inside those 26 recipes, there were reblending and reblending and reblending. So there was lots and lots of tasting to try and come up with the style. And again, for us, it was about putting together a rum that we wanted people to drink every day. So the same idea, the same concept of the daily tot, but a different rum, because people drink different drinks now to what they did 30, 40 years ago. In the same way that when you look through the records of the last consignment, you find that the recipe changed. They took out Jamaican rum because the sailors didn't want it. They found it too funky, probably. Whereas nowadays people love Jamaican rum, so we put that back in. Yeah, blending is exactly that. I'd love to tell you that it's precise. It's not. Dawn and I did a tasting with Sukhinder, 3 years ago, Dawn? Was it with Jim Beveridge and Diageo?
Oh, yes. Must be. It was his
Before
birthday,
that,
so yeah, 3 years.
It was, so I always thought that we were hobbyists, we were chancers. Because every time I did blending, you'd come up with an idea, you put it together, and then it would be wrong. So then you'd have to tweak it and change it and tweak it and change it. And I always thought, a great blender would be able to say, if I put this, and this together, it will taste like this and it'll be perfect. And we did that tasting with Jim Beveridge, who is an utter genius. And I remember we got about halfway through of our 50-odd different blends that we put together. We said, is it always this difficult? He goes, yeah. I mean, you always think you know what you're going to get, but it always changes. I mean, blending is definitely more of a... if you say it's an art, that sounds nice, doesn't it? But I think it's more haphazard than science. Is probably the better way.
A cake and arse party, John, if you want me to translate what Ollie's going to say.
Yeah.
Guys, the other thing I'll add to that is that when you're doing blending, I think you can look at blending in 2 ways, yeah? You've got some companies which do blending because they have liquid which may not be amazing, so they need to use it, so they add some other stuff to it to get to a quality which is drinkable, yeah? You could argue that's one reason for blending. The other type of blending is where you use all amazing products and you mix them together, and at the end you generally end up with something quite nice. But then you also have a scenario where you get to the point in mixing different products together, in this case rum, but then you want to sort of iron out some of the nuances, you want to mellow the rum out, so then you take different components and you add to those blends to get to where you want to. The interesting thing is, when we put in Black Tot together, some of the components we used, we might not have actually, on another project, used them because on their own they were a bit too light or a bit too immature. But actually, to add to a blend, they gave it a dimension. They mellowed the blend out and added fruit in to exactly what we needed. So it is an art. It really is an art. I mean, and again, if you go back to the original rum ration, logically they were taking new rum, putting it in a barrel, shipping it, and putting it into Solera. And, it only spent maybe 2, 3, 4 months in a barrel before being put into the Solera. So it was very young rum, which had very little wood influence. And most of the flavor, most of the marrying, most of the impact of harmonization came through the Solera system. So my feeling is, they were putting really good quality, neutral, or very young rums in the Solera. You ended up with a very, very nice product at the end of the day. Plus, as Ollie said, the Solera was always a third full. It was, never emptied. It was always emptied up to a third where the pipework was. And that again adds so much extra to the blend. So there's so many ways of looking at blending.
Absolutely. And the other thing is the oxygen, because what we can't do now is we haven't.
Ollie, could you go back a bit? You're distorting.
Sorry, oxygen. Yeah, what we don't do now, we're not putting in an open top vat, so you don't have the oxygen interaction that you would have had with last consignment. And for me, I think when you look at old bottles, we're all come from a background of old bottle geeks, right? Bottles, whiskey, rum, they change in the bottle. That's a fact. It's an absolute fact, empirical fact. They change very slowly, but oxygen is playing a part in that change. And when you think of those massive vats and the amount of oxygen you've got playing on that spirit, they're going to adjust and they're going to change and kind of add a dimension that we're not getting today. And it is something, I know Mitch and I spoke about this, it's something I'd love to one day be able to recreate. Though I'm pretty sure our accounts department would have a heart attack if I told them I was going to increase our losses.
Do it, go rogue. I'll do it for you. Just give me the liquid. I'll find that.
Yeah. You've also got flagons as well.
I've got a question, Oliver. I've just got a bottle of rum in my hand called Black Tot, and it says unsweetened. And on the other side, it says unchill filtered. Does that mean you add sugar?
No, so
sugar, isn't it?
With Finest Caribbean, we haven't added any sugar to the end process, and we've not chill filtered. Chill filtration is a technique where you reduce the temperature of a spirit, and you basically filter out fats. Is probably the best way to describe them. And basically, these compounds would go cloudy if they got too cold. So we don't filter those out. We leave them in. So John, if you reduce the strength of that and stick it in the freezer, it'll go cloudy. Which it doesn't look very nice, but it tastes really good. I'm a big guy, so I like fats. Fats are great. They should be well enjoyed, as far as I'm concerned. So we leave all those in. On the sugar side, that was a choice just because the rum we were making was quite sweet, naturally sweet, and it felt if I didn't need anything extra. And plus, I come from a whiskey background. I've got quite a dry palate. I like dry things. I was reading up a couple of days ago about the Navy rum. Now, one of the component parts we use comes from Guyana. It is definitely coloured. It's almost certainly coloured with essentially like molasses. I got shown some of this stuff. It looks like treacle. It's horrendous. But it obviously contains a lot of flavour. And one of the records I found on Last Consignment said that there's a good chance they were just essentially adding treacle or molasses to the rum before transport, again for colour, because you would have bought your rum by colour, and believe it or not, from Guyana, you'd say I want a dark one, or I want this particular colour of rum. So they were adding molasses or treacle to it to change the colour of it, but that also changed the flavour, and it makes it richer and heavier. The rum we use that has that in it, when we got the original sample, we didn't know that. We we didn't know the composition of it. We just got given a sample and they said, try this. And I remember Sukhinder and I trying going, this is wild. It will make a fantastic base for what we're doing. And it was only afterwards that we asked what was in it, and they were like, oh yeah, it's full of molasses. And you're like, great. But it gives you a depth and a character I think you wouldn't get otherwise.
So we've got a question here on the screen from Dan Hall. Given the Solera roots of Navy rum, have you considered doing some smaller batch variations like the Foursquare exceptional cask range?
Well, Mitch, we're talking about that tomorrow, aren't we? So we'll give it away now.
For 23 hours.
just
tune in at 7:30.
Just hang on. Dan, we need your patience for a good 20 hours, and we'll tell you exactly the answer to your question. But maybe we can give them a little teaser.
Actually, I'd like to say, Dan, I like the way you put Solera in brackets. I very much appreciate that, because there is only one Solera system in the bloody world, and that is in Jerez. The others are perpetual aging systems. Thank you very much. I've said my piece. I will shut up about Soleras for the rest of the session.
Dawn doesn't feel very strongly about this at all, as you can tell.
Sorry, question.
So I guess the teaser is we're doing obviously our 50th anniversary bottling that contains some interesting bits and pieces, which we'll go through tomorrow. One of the great things about our company is because we're small and independent, independently owned by Sukhinder, which means we get a lot of freedom to essentially mess around. One of the first things we started doing when we were buying our various blends and the new rums we were purchasing was re-racking, recasking. So we have some Finest Caribbean blend, exactly the same stuff in the bottle that we've recast, and that's sitting in a variety of different things that we're messing around with. We've got each component part we use for this recast. We've got other aged rums that we've bought, and we have some plans for the future to have some more fun. Essentially, for us, it's just about creating new liquids. Otherwise, I'd be out of a job. So we've got to keep myself busy.
And I believe we're working on a daiquiri rum as well, Ollie. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a certain member of the team who's quite obsessed with daiquiris and wants to make a daiquiri rum. I actually do have some bits coming in, Mitch, just to look at. So I thought we'd have some fun with it. You know.
I very much look forward to that meeting. Now, if you have any questions, if you're watching along at home, please feel free, throw them in the comments, ask any questions you've got. We've got the last few minutes now, and we're going to finish up with a little poem very soon. But before we do, John, one of my favourite parts about our last sessions was your stories about the rum rats and the people on ships going the extra mile to get an extra tot of rum or more than their fair measure. And I'd love you just to share a little bit more about the rum rats with us today.
Were
you a rum rat, John?
I've been racking my brain all night to try and think of something that's different. And nobody's telling me my glasses are cockeyed, and I'm getting really annoyed with that. Yeah, I can't really think of any more stories, but I have one little ditty. If look it up, a ditty.
That's like a story, a song.
Regarding my days on HMS Hecate, which is a survey ship and carried a helicopter. Now, I don't know whether I mentioned this. I know I've spoken maybe offline, I don't know. And as I've said, it was me in charge of the rum for 2.5 years. And one day I got called up and the captain wanted me to take some blankets. I also had to do bedding. And we had to set these blankets ashore. And I said, I'll just chuck them in the helicopter. And he said, no, you've got to go and get a signature for them. Now, I'd never flown before, and since really. But this little Wasp helicopter got no doors on. And I didn't want to do it. So I went round the ship, the whole bloody ship. Hey, mate, I says, do you want an extra top? What doing? Going up in the helicopter. No, I'm not going to do that. And I went round the whole ship. I couldn't get anybody to go up in that chopper, even for an extra shot of rum. So I had to do it myself. And going
Did you
up,
get
no
yourself an
doors
extra
on,
shot?
hanging out the door. I come back for top time. I said, right, you people, you're going to have a dead top. Absolutely no extra, no queens, nothing. You're not looking after me. I'm not looking after you. So sod you. So that was it. That's the only thing I can come up with. I mean, as I've said before, we just drank it. There's hundreds of stories out there, people falling down. Like my mate Colin Northcott, when you store shit, you remove the ladders, they collapse. So you've got a straight 8-foot drop. He used to issue the top with me. And whether it was his birthday or not, I don't know. But anyway, he'd gone around a few messes and blah, blah, blah. And he'd forgotten that they removed the ladder. And he just stepped over the metal, get what you call it now. And he fell down 8 foot straight onto a metal deck. He just got up and he said, who the bloody hell moved the ladder? Which he done so much, he didn't hurt himself. And it's just that's the way you get it down you as fast as you can, because you might get called out or you might get caught even. So you just drank it. You didn't have time there to sip it. You got it down you. If you didn't drink it, somebody would come round and say, "Is that going free? Is that Harry Freers?" I said, "No, get it down your neck." And that was all we did. We never tasted it. And of course, when it was mixed with water, 1 part rum and 2 parts, it's bloody awful stuff. But you were forced to drink it. It was either that or threepence a day. Well, I used to have my neat tot and my threepence, but the grog. I mean, have any of these experts, Sukhinder? Yvonne's just said I'm going to get into trouble. Sukhinder, have you ever tasted a proper tot, a grog tot with 1 part rum and 2 parts water for any reason, or have you always? I know you have rum and coke and that kind of stuff, but have you ever replicated a Navy tot?
We did, John. So when we launched Last Consignment on HMS Belfast, as I said, we had 3 Navy chaps there, ex-Navy guys, and they recreated the grog for us at the time. So yeah.
Did they not comment on? I said before on HMS Belfast, the issue room setup for the issuing of the tot was wrong. We went on it 2 years ago, and I was really upset to say that the officer was dishing out the rum on Belfast, and that's not true. So whoever did it didn't know the facts.
Right. I mean, the guys we had weren't from HMS Belfast. We met them somewhere else.
Yeah. I spoke to them. They were just civvies, just looking after the ship, But so, what did you knock the top back as you should do in one?
Certainly did.
And it was a shock to the system.
The fact that Sukhinder can drink.
Yeah, that is. Don't worry.
The taste is totally different when it's with water.
It is totally different. Yeah. It's totally different.
No.
But I think, look, water works with spirits, works with rum. So, you're just diluting it really at the end of it.
Did you get bits of wood in it as well?
No.
Oh, well, that's not a proper top then. You got a bit of wood.
That's good.
Straight from the bottom of the barrel to get that last tot out. You always get those little bit of splinters at the bottom.
John.
Well, John, we've coming to the end of our session, and we need your farewell poem, the Make Lots Tots, because we'll be very disappointed if we don't have it. So, John, to close out our session, please, would you like to read your poem?
Now, I'm very shy, you know this, and I don't talk a lot. I haven't written this. This was written by some anonymous person, and this is the original post. It's got the Queen, God bless her, different things there. There's the 2 civil servants that got rid of it. and other ones.
We want to hear the toast. John, give us the toast.
Matlot's farewell to his tot. You soothed my nerves and warmed my limbs, and cheered my dismal heart, procured my wants, obliged my whims, and now it's time to part. Mid endless perils of the deep and miseries untold, you summoned sweet forgetful sleep, cocooned me from the cold. 10 years ago the pound of leaf that cast its fragrant spell about the ship expired in grief and sadness of farewell. So guests may find the pantry bare whene'er they choose to come. Your hospitality was always there, a tot of navy rum. 300 years or more you filled the storm-tossed sailor's need. Now you've been killed by spite distilled from jealousy and greed, and petty clerks with scrawny necks who never saw a wave, nor felt the spray, nor heaving decks consigned you to your grave. Alas, however, I protest to save myself from hurt. They tell me it's for the best to keep us all alert. And so the time has come, old friend, to take the final sup. Our tears are shed, this is the end. Goodbye and bottoms up. Cheers.
Cheers. Well done, everyone. Thank you for the session.
That was incredible.
Amazing.
John,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Oliver, thank you for joining us. Sukhinder, thank you.
Quickly,
Thank
can I say
you. Bye.
Hey, stay
Something
tuned
before
for
we go.
sugarcane and champagne. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Can I go back to bed now?
Yeah, you can.